Hello, I'm Beck. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be drawing a D&D character based on the roll of the dice. Let's bring out the Tower of Destiny! So this week it's not going to be a playable character, it's going to be a playable character's animal mode of transportation, otherwise known as a mount. Now, in the rules, a mount can be any willing creature that is at least one size larger than you and has an appropriate anatomy that can serve as a mount. So I had a bit of fun scrolling through all the different creatures of D&D, and I decided that the skill abilities wouldn't apply to the animal itself, it would apply to whoever's riding it, so the playable character. In this case, it's going to be a Warlock fighter, so I wanted something that was a little bit creepy, a little bit intimidating, and in the end I decided to go with a giant toad. I really like how this toad looks. He's very cute in this position, but I do just delete it in a second because I wanted the giant toad to be really giant, and I realized angle-wise, you wouldn't be able to see a small rider on his back if he was sitting in the middle of the toad's back, because I made him very round and adorable. But yeah, if you have a tiny guy on his back, you wouldn't be able to see him in that angle, or maybe just the top of his head. But I wanted you to be able to see, like, enough of the guy to see that there's a guy there, so yeah. And because the ability table has the lowest statistic being the charisma at -2, I did want the creature's suggested abilities to also have a low charisma. In this case, it's a -4, so I think that applies pretty well. And as you can see, the giant toad does have some interesting ability actions, I don't know what you call them, where it has amphibious and standing leap. That would still apply if you were using this toad to ride, which means, well, while the toad can breathe air and water, you still can't unless you've cast some sort of magic on yourself, or if you are a race that can breathe air and water. But also the standing leap, so it's not a creature that can fly, but it can jump pretty well. And it also has actions in combat, which I think you can still use when it's a mount, but I haven't read up on that. Let me know if you know details. As a DM, I would allow it if they're just like, they also go on your turn or whatever, but it would also be like a common sense thing if, like, you physically can't reach someone, you can't do melee while you're on this giant toad, but it can attack on your behalf, under your command, something like that. Yeah. So looking at the abilities of the rider, of our Warlock fighter, we can see that they are not particularly strong or dexterous, which is why I also wanted this to be like a beefy mount, because they're kind of compensating for a lack of physical strength that they have. And I decided that the Warlock's patron would be Baba Yaga, which is a powerful witch hag type character in the D&D universe. I think she's an archfey, maybe, technically. I couldn't really find a lot of information on her on D&D Beyond, but Tasha, as in the Tasha's Cauldron, she's like her daughter or something? I'll look that up, but I don't know if I'll actually put it on the screen. You tell me the story of Baba Yaga in D&D universe if you know it, but otherwise I'm sort of leaving it as she's kind of like a bog witch. She's very like mushrooms and toads and scariness and dark swamp vibes. So that's also the reason that this Warlock fighter is going with a giant toad as their mount. I think I'm going to call this giant toad Barry, and its rider will be Bog. So Bog and Barry are on adventures together, and I think that Barry was actually given to Bog as a tadpole from Baba Yaga as a gift/test as to whether Bog was actually worthy of having such a awesome mount. So Bog had to look after this little tadpole that would have grown pretty significantly quite quickly, and it would have been sort of an awkward thing to bring with them. Him, her? Haven't really decided. Let's just go with them. Who cares? And so most of the time, Bog would have had this jar with a tadpole in it that had to get bigger, and like they have to keep finding bigger jars throughout their journey until it was in that weird middle stage. I don't remember all the phases that a frog goes through, but they need a lot of water and they they don't like to get too dried out. So yeah, I think it was important that Bog demonstrated they could look after Barry, and then when Barry got big enough to ride, it became obvious that like they were very strongly connected and Barry would do whatever Bog wanted him to do. And yeah, I think they formed a really strong connection that way. And I don't know if the rest of the party that Bog is traveling with has their own mounts. If they do, they certainly don't have a giant toad. And I think there might be a case of a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of some other characters being a bit weary of Barry. I think maybe Barry has a bit of an attitude with the -2 charisma. He's not well liked. Although that's the Warlock's charisma. Barry has a -4 charisma because I'm using the suggested stat block. And yeah. Let me just bring Barry's stat block up again, because this is the stats that we're using for the animal and not the player. I don't know why I did it this way, but I'm leaning into it. So here's how we go. Barry is very, very strong. Well, very strong, not very, very. Very, very would be a +4. He's quite strong. It's a +2. He's quite dexterous with a +1, and constitution's good. Not an intelligent toad with a -4, so charisma and intelligence are very low. And he's just basic for wisdom because he's a large beast. He's not that sentient. He can read body language, he can understand the vibe of what's going on, which is wisdom, but he's an animal, so -4 intelligence makes sense, and -4 charisma because he's a big, arguably gross looking animal. I think he's very cute, but it would also depend on if he were to slobber on me or try and eat me like a fly. So there's that. I think he does play shenanigans where he will pretend to eat members of the party whenever they bother the Warlock fighter, Boggy. I forgot his name. Boggy. Bog is his name. And if anyone makes Bog angry, even if it's just like having a silly tiff among party members, I think Barry tries to put them in their place by not eating them, but like using his tongue to like grab them and hold them in his mouth until they decide to be nice to his master again. I think he's very loyal that way. And what else can I say about him? Mounts are a lot simpler to talk about than, say, going into the details of what a Warlock is and what a fighter is and what the backstory of the Warlock fighter is and what their life was all about. This isn't about them. This is about Barry. Barry, the giant toad who is a mount going on adventures in that capacity. Well, I mean, we can have a look at my inspo things. I'm going to try and put up my reference images whenever I can. Most of them aren't going to have credits because that takes a lot more effort and it's really just like chuck and dump. I'm a classy lady. I see them on Pinterest, so unless they have the author artist credited in the photo, it's not going to be on there because I don't have time to backwards Google search everything. And again, it's just a reference. So, bam, here we go. I don't really have a great place to put these, so I've moved it over to the side while I'm talking about it, covering the abilities of the Warlock fighter because they're largely irrelevant for the animal. In future, I'll do it like I did last time, which I'm now remembering is I use the abilities that I rolled for the animal, not for the person who rides it. That makes more sense. I don't know what I was thinking about earlier, but who cares? These reference images, you can see that I've taken a lot of inspiration from other people's cute frogs and the color scheme. I did something from Coolers, which is COOLERS.com. If you know about it, you know about it. It's fun to play with. There are a couple of images in the upper right hand corner where I was literally just looking to get the lighting inspiration from there. I wanted it to be like a nighttime moonlit background vibe. In the top you can obviously see the pose references for the character, which I ended up not really using any of other than they're holding a sword. If I had the frog on slightly more of an angle without being quite so round, I would have been able to use the sort of side riding positioning that they had. And also the way that the position of the toad's head meant that I couldn't show that they were carrying a bunch of stuff with them, like potions and weapons and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm looking for inspiration, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for, where like you see the girl on the panda, she has some like cool swag with her, and that's something I would normally forget to add, even though if you're going on an adventure and you have a mount, logically you would be carrying stuff on your mount. And of course I have some pictures of like fairies riding toads and just that cranky toad in the middle, and the stupidly round one riding a broom on the side there. There's so many ways to make toads look cute, where it's that like creepy cute. It reminds me a little bit of like a pug, where everyone finds them so adorable, but I think it is that full circle of like they're a little bit gross looking, and that's what makes them even more adorable because they have no idea. They have no idea. And that's kind of the expression of the purple toad dragon thing in the corner there, where it's just happy to see you. And depending on how big it is compared to you, that could be a terrifying sort of reaction, where when you get home from work at the end of the day and your dog comes running up to greet you, I say that like it's a normal thing. That doesn't happen to me. I have cats. I want a dog one day, maybe two. We'll see. I'm rambling in relation to dogs, which has got nothing to do with this. But yes, if you had a puppy that was the size of a bus running towards you, that would be a little bit scary. So, you know, there is that, and that's the point I was trying to make there. The drawing that I did has Barry the toad trying to be a bit more intimidating, but he's still a little bit adorable because, you know, he belongs to someone and he's loved, so he's got that vibe about him as well. And yeah, this is Barry the giant toad belonging to a warlock fighter named Bog. And I like to imagine the kind of adventures they would get up to, especially because they wouldn't all be in a swampy, foresty situation. Some of them would be in a city, they would be in an urban terrain, or even on a boat, like a pirate ship. It's fun to imagine just like showing up somewhere with this giant toad being like, yeah, you have your horses, what's the problem? I don't understand what the problem is. So yeah, that's fun. What do you think of Barry and Bog? Barry and Bog, Barry and Bog, they could have their own TV show, but they don't. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that little song of mine, and I will catch you next week with another fantastic drawing. Okay, bye.